Last year, I lived in a furnished apartment across town for almost 6 months while waiting for repairs to be completed in my actual apartment building. There wasn't very many people living in my building at the time, so only a few of these units were occupied by people from my same building. The rest were just residents who lived there full-time. The apartment itself was more like a studio, so a little smaller than I was used to, but it was really nice and really clean. I actually started to quite enjoy the space while I was there. It sat up against a greenbelt or a wetland of some kind. You could hear a constant stream of water. There was a small balcony where you could sit maybe 2 people comfortably, so I liked to sit out there during the hot summer nights. You could hear the nature over the sound of traffic in this spot, thanks to that stream. During the day, you would hear birds, small critters, you'd see deer. In the night, it was the sound of owls, coyotes, but also a symphony of sounds created by the various bugs and frogs that occupied the wetland. Part of me didn't want to leave this place, but this is early in, maybe 2 months. When the fall started to approach, things changed. I mean, technically for me, everything changed. I can't even think about the woods the same, let alone see them without wondering, is that thing in there? It was just after Labor Day, the first cool day that we'd had since June. It finally felt decent inside, but it felt even better outside with the breeze. I remember thinking that the moon looked exceptionally large that night. Beautiful, but larger than life, and acting as a giant nightlight for the evening. When I recall what happens next, it feels like my eyes were temporarily closed. I was listening to the sounds. They were soothing, until they went mute. Aside from the stream, everything went quiet at the same time. I opened my eyes and looked towards the green belt. I wondered why the sound had suddenly ceased, but I couldn't explain it. Then, just as I thought I'd give it no more thought, a loud wailing began. I'd never heard anything like this in real life, and as much as I wanted to blame it on a neighbor's loud television or their idea of a joke, I knew the sound came from outside. It came from the very green belt I was so fond of. A moment later, I heard the balcony door to my left open, and I saw a man lean over. He was from my original building, a guy named Sam, who was about 27, like myself. He asked if I'd heard that noise, and if I thought it sounded like a scream. I told him I'd never heard anything like that. If it was a scream, what was screaming like that? He was about to say something when the loud wailing sounded again, absolutely closer this time. It was the only sound I could hear, and I had a bad feeling about it. I didn't hear Sam go inside, but he was gone when I had the nerve to peek over the side and whisper his name. I was alone out there, and so I decided to stand up and slowly make my way inside. But when I did, I saw more of the green belt. I saw something larger than anything I'd ever seen, not just in this area, but in the woods in general. Sure, I don't go backpacking every weekend, but I'm familiar with the wildlife in my state. In this area, this thing stood as tall as some of the young trees, but its girth, it could have taken those trees from their roots. I couldn't tell if the thing had fur. I didn't know if it was a giant human or I don't know, but I eventually saw it see me. Before, I couldn't be sure where it was facing, but the presence of 2 glowing red eyes suddenly appeared where this thing's head should be. I felt legitimately frozen. I knew if I really tried, I could likely move or even look away, but it was like I couldn't try too hard, or wouldn't. The strange sensation of being terrified, yet not trying to move. I couldn't understand it, even as I was doing it. I remember thinking, where's the moon's brightness? Why won't it show me what I'm looking at? The longer I stared, the more everything sort of dispersed. Everything besides these 2 red eyes, or whatever they were. Then I didn't feel those things anymore. And even though I can still remember as much detail as I provided here, I still feel like I'm missing something. Like, I don't remember the eyes going away. I don't understand what happened, and I don't understand what I saw. I just know from then on I was eager to get back to my apartment. Well-lit streets, busy sounds of traffic. I suddenly missed the view of the theater from my apartment building. The neon sign used to sort of bother me, but after that moment, I longed for the light. So, I guess I'm just one of those people who's of the personal opinion that there are strange things in the woods, and it's probably not just here in the Pacific Northwest. We had a neighbor in Michigan who passed away in such a peculiar manner. The oddity of it all really shook our small community. It was the early 80s. Most kids had curfews after the streetlights turned on. In the area I lived in, we were told to get inside before the sun set. In grade school is where I learned about Bloody Mary. Me and my friends would try to scare each other by saying that we really saw her in the mirror. When we would have sleepovers, we would take turns going into the dark bathroom, staring into the mirror and saying Bloody Mary 3 times. Each of us would burst from the bathroom and swear on everything that our fictitious story of what we saw was the God's honest truth. Then a kid that goes to our school went missing. Sniffer dogs would find his head and torso in a field. Reports said that there were large bite marks on the body, but they couldn't distinguish if they occurred pre- or post-death. As our parents tried to grasp meaning from the senseless tragedy, word spread around school that Bloody Mary got him. It was most likely a serial killer, as 2 more bodies of missing kids would be found around the Great Lake area within the same month. But none of them were quite as horrific or visceral as what happened to our classmate. The other bodies were intact. They'd been strangled and assaulted. The body of our classmate was completely ripped apart. The adults started coming up with their own theories, attempting to understand it all. At a town hall meeting, a farmer was mocked when he started talking about a giant black creature killing his livestock north of the field where they found the boy. But then, amidst the laughter and chatter, another voice speaks up from somewhere in the room, claiming they've also seen something dark as night running through the trees around his backyard. He described it as a wolf with eyes and teeth of a shark. As the crowd begins to steadily hush, more and more people come forward with accounts, all describing the same thing. After that meeting, a small group of willing men gathered weapons and flashlights, then went looking for whatever was in those woods. They combed all around the forest in ATVs all night and into the next day. One of the hunters claimed to have seen a dim, glowing ball of light following behind him while he was riding through the trees. It stayed behind him for a couple of miles, then went super fast past him, like a clap of lightning in the dark. None of the other men could confirm his story, though, because they'd all gone in separate directions trying to cover as much land as possible. A year would go by without an attack, then another and another. The town would eventually be able to reclaim its calm, pastoral feel and heal. Some still fully believe that it was an otherworldly being that visited the town, and some will claim that it was the work of a deranged serial killer that was caught years ago.